Linda stood at the busy cruise terminal with her small grey suitcase beside her. The air smelled like salt and sunshine, and people rushed past her with excitement, taking selfies and laughing loudly. But Linda did not feel excited at all. She felt a strange pressure in her chest, something heavy and cold, something she could not explain. She held her ticket in her hand and kept staring at one detail again and again. It said one-way pass in bold letters, as if someone wanted her to notice it again and again. She didn't understand why her son, Mark, would buy her a ticket like this. A one-way pass for a relaxing trip. Who does that? Mark stood a few steps away from her, talking on his phone in a low voice. He kept turning his back to her like he did not want her to hear anything. He looked stressed, his shoulders tight, his face pale. When he finally ended the call, he walked up to her quickly and forced a smile. "Mom, please don't worry. It's just a system mistake. The cruise line will take care of everything when you're on board. I told you, this is your time to relax. You deserve it." Linda nodded slowly, but her mind still whispered that something was not right. Mark looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he avoided her eyes every time she tried to look at him. He hugged her quickly and said, "Enjoy the trip, okay? Don't think about anything else." But even his hug felt strange. It was short. It felt like a goodbye he didn't want to give. When Linda entered the cruise ship, everything looked beautiful. The ship was huge, like a floating city. Light music played in the background, and staff members wore bright uniforms with shiny name badges. She saw families laughing, couples taking romantic photos, children running around like they were in a theme park. But Linda felt none of their joy. She felt watched. She felt like someone's eyes were following her from behind. She turned around several times, but nobody was looking at her. Still, the feeling stayed. She reached her cabin, a small but beautiful room with a big window facing the endless ocean. She placed her bag on the bed and breathed in slowly. She wanted to enjoy this trip. She wanted to believe Mark that this was only for her peace. But her mind kept pulling her back to the one-way ticket. She sat down on the bed, opened her purse, and took out the ticket again. She stared at it like it would suddenly explain itself. But it didn't. After some time, she left the cabin to explore the ship. She walked into the main lobby, where a staff member with a friendly smile greeted her. Her name badge read Sophie. She had kind blue eyes and a soft voice. "Welcome on board, m. Do you need help with anything?" Linda hesitated for a second, then showed her the ticket. "My son told me this ticket includes everything," she said gently. "But it only shows one way. Is that normal?" Sophie looked at the ticket for a moment, and her smile faded just a little. It was small, almost invisible, but Linda saw it. Sophie cleared her throat softly and said, "It's unusual. But I will check with the administration for you, m. Don't worry." Unusual. The word echoed in Linda's mind. As she walked deeper into the ship, she felt someone walking very close behind her. When she turned, she saw a tall man wearing a black cap. He stepped aside quickly and walked in the opposite direction. Linda couldn't see his face, but she felt her heartbeat rise. Maybe he wasn't following her. Maybe she was just nervous. But she could not shake off the feeling. Linda spent the day trying to enjoy the cruise. She walked on the deck, watched the ocean, and drank a cup of tea in the lounge. But everywhere she went, she felt something strange. A whisper behind her, a shadow moving too quickly, a door closing when she came close to it. She kept telling herself she was overthinking. She was tired. She needed rest. That evening, when she returned to her cabin, her heart almost stopped. The door was slightly open. She was sure she had closed it tightly before leaving. She pushed the door slowly and stepped inside. Nothing looked touched. Nothing seemed stolen. But something was wrong. The pillows were not placed the way she had left them. Her suitcase was slightly open even though she clearly remembered closing it. And her necklace, a gift from her late husband, was lying on the table, even though she had placed it inside her suitcase. Someone had been here. Linda locked the door immediately and sat on the bed, shaking. She wanted to call Mark, tell him something strange was happening. She dialed his number, but his phone was switched off. She tried again and again, but it didn't connect. She left a message saying, "Mark, please call me. Something is not right. I need to talk to you." She didn't sleep much that night. Every sound felt louder, every shadow felt darker. The ship moved softly over the water, but even that gentle motion felt heavy to her. Around midnight, her cabin phone rang once. Just once. She picked it up quickly, hoping it was Mark. But there was no voice. Only quiet breathing. Then the call ended. Linda could not sleep after that. The next morning, she went to the security desk. A tall guard named Paul listened to her story and checked the system. "Our camera near your corridor hasn't been working since yesterday," he said. "Some technical problem. We're fixing it." Her stomach tightened. The only camera near her room was broken. On the same day someone entered her cabin. It felt like too much of a coincidence. Later in the afternoon, she saw something that made her blood run cold. She was walking past the ship's cafe when she noticed a guest list pinned behind the counter. It had the names of all passengers. She scanned the list out of curiosity, and suddenly her eyes froze. Her heart skipped a beat. Mark Reynolds. Her son's name. He was on the ship. He told her he was staying home. He told her he had work. But his name was right there on the list, with a cabin number. Linda felt dizzy. Why would he lie? Why would he secretly come on the cruise? Was he hiding from something? Or hiding something from her? She hurried toward the cabin number written next to his name, but when she reached there, the door was locked. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. She stood there, confused and scared, and then walked away quickly before someone noticed her. That night, she sat alone on the deck. The sky was dark, the water endless and deep. She felt small, like the ocean could swallow her fears but never give her peace. When she returned to her cabin later in the evening, she found something slipped under her door, an envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a small piece of paper with only one line written in messy handwriting. "Don't trust anyone. Not even your son." Linda dropped the paper in shock. Her knees felt weak. She grabbed the wall to steady herself. Who wrote this? Why would someone warn her about Mark? What did her son do? Why did he bring her here? She fell onto her bed and held her hands together tightly. Her heartbeat raced like it wanted to break out of her chest. The room felt smaller, darker, colder. She felt like someone was watching her again, but there was no one there. Only silence. She picked up the paper again and stared at the words. "Don't trust anyone. Not even your son." The words felt heavy, like a stone pressing on her chest. She whispered to herself, "Mark, what are you hiding from me?" Tears filled her eyes. She felt confused, scared, and betrayed. She had always trusted Mark. She raised him alone after her husband died. She worked 2 jobs to give him a better life. And now she was on a huge ship, in the middle of the ocean, with a one-way ticket and a warning telling her not to trust the only family she had. Who put that note under her door? Was it the man in the black cap? Was it someone Mark knew? Was Mark in danger? Or was she? Linda sat by the window and looked at the dark ocean. The waves moved calmly, but she felt the storm inside her. She didn't know what was waiting for her. She didn't know why she was sent here. But she knew one thing, the truth was somewhere on this ship, and she had to find it. She whispered softly, "Why did you bring me here, Mark?" as the moonlight touched her face through the window. And far away on another deck, hidden behind the shadows, someone watched her through the glass. Quiet. Still. Waiting. Linda could hardly sleep that night. Every sound from the ship, the gentle creak of metal, the distant laughter from the lounge, the hum of engines beneath her cabin, felt like a warning. Her thoughts circled around Mark. Why had he brought her here? Was he in danger, or had he somehow planned this for her? The note she had found under the door repeated in her mind, "Don't trust anyone. Not even your son." It felt like a cold hand gripping her chest. The next morning, Linda decided she could not stay passive. She needed answers. She started observing the people around her carefully, trying to find anyone acting suspiciously. On the top deck, she saw a man in a black coat, the same one she thought she had noticed before. He was standing at the edge of the deck, looking out at the water, but every few seconds he glanced back, scanning the ship, as though he were expecting someone. Linda's heart pounded. She remembered Captain Harris telling her yesterday to enjoy the trip and not worry. But she could not ignore the feeling that she was being watched. Quietly, she stepped behind a row of lounge chairs, trying not to be seen. The man turned suddenly, and for a second their eyes met. His gaze was cold, calculating, and then he slipped into a corridor where Linda could not follow without being noticed. Something in her stomach told her this man was connected to her son's presence on the ship. She decided she needed help. She remembered seeing a police detective on board yesterday, a man who had been traveling on the ship for a separate case. She found him in the ship's small library, reviewing some documents. He was tall, with a serious face, and his badge was tucked under his coat. When he noticed her watching him, he motioned for her to come closer. "I need your help," Linda whispered, glancing around nervously. "Something is wrong. My son, he's here, but he didn't tell me. And someone is. I think someone is trying to scare me." The detective, whose name was Walsh, studied her carefully. "Your son. Do you know why he's here?" Linda shook her head. "He said this trip was for me, to relax. But the ticket, it's one way. And yesterday, a note was slipped under my door saying, 'Don't trust anyone. Not even your son.' I don't understand. I feel like I'm in danger." Walsh's expression darkened. "A one-way ticket and a warning like that, you're not imagining things. Something is wrong." Linda swallowed hard. "Do you think my son could be involved?" Walsh didn't answer immediately. He leaned back and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I don't know yet. But I do know this, whoever put that note there knows you're vulnerable. And your son being here, it complicates things. We need to find out why he is really on this ship." Over the next few hours, Linda and Walsh started quietly gathering clues. Linda stayed near the corridors she thought were suspicious, noticing when someone lingered too long near her cabin. Walsh checked the ship's surveillance cameras as far as he could, but he kept encountering the same problem the guard had mentioned. Many of the cameras near Linda's cabin and other corridors had technical problems. That could not be coincidence. Someone wanted her to feel unsafe. Someone wanted to manipulate her. Later that evening, Linda returned to her cabin. Her heart leapt when she noticed her suitcase had moved slightly. She immediately scanned the room. Nothing appeared stolen, but her private items were no longer in the same arrangement. She realized someone had entered while she was out. She grabbed her phone and texted Mark again, hoping for a response, but once more, his number was unreachable. Then, without warning, the cabin phone rang. Linda jumped, her hands trembling. She picked up. A faint voice whispered her name, "Linda," then silence. She tried speaking, but no one answered. The line went dead. By this point, she knew she could not trust anyone, or at least, she could not ignore the warning. She decided to take matters into her own hands. She wrote down everything she had observed. Mark was on the ship despite claiming he stayed home. Someone in a black coat had been following her. The cameras had conveniently malfunctioned. A warning note had been slipped under her door. Unfamiliar items appeared in her cabin. She packed a small bag with essentials and slipped out of her room at night, intending to follow the man in the black coat. The ship was nearly empty as most guests were in the lounge or restaurants. She moved slowly, listening carefully to every step behind her. Suddenly, she saw a shadow move into a service corridor. She followed silently. The corridor led to the lower decks, where only crew members and maintenance staff usually went. The black-coated man stopped near a door labeled Crew Only and spoke quietly into a phone. She crouched behind a wall and strained to hear. "She's here. Keep her distracted. Make sure she doesn't find out until tomorrow night," the man said. Linda's blood ran cold. Someone was planning something, right here, on this ship, tonight. She backed away quietly and ran into Walsh, who had been tailing the man himself. "I knew you would follow the clues," he said. "We need to act fast. We can't let him know we're on to him." Linda explained what she had overheard. Walsh nodded gravely. "This is serious. That man is dangerous. And if your son is involved, we need to be careful. We'll need to set a trap and catch him before he acts." Together, they started planning. Linda knew she could not hide behind fear any longer. She needed to be alert, observant, and brave. Walsh gave her instructions on how to move around without being seen, how to identify suspicious activity, and how to signal him if something went wrong. That night, Linda stayed awake, waiting for signs. The ship creaked, wind whistled through the deck rails, and she kept glancing at the shadows. At 2 a.m., she noticed the black-coated man again. He moved toward her cabin, glancing around nervously. She quickly pressed the emergency button in her room, alerting Walsh. He was nearby, moving quietly through the corridors. The man froze for a moment, sensing someone else was aware. Linda slipped behind a stack of boxes just as he approached her door. Walsh moved behind the man, silently pointing a flashlight at him. The beam startled the figure, who spun around. Walsh grabbed him, revealing a surprising identity: Victor, a known associate of Mark's from past shady dealings. Linda's eyes widened. Victor had been helping Mark, or controlling him. She realized that everything on this cruise was part of a plan, a trap, and she had narrowly avoided it. Victor tried to speak, but Walsh cut him off. "Not a word. You're coming with me. And you're telling everything about Mark." Victor's face twisted with rage, but he was caught. Walsh guided Linda away, keeping her close and calm. She could hardly believe what had happened. The cruise that was supposed to be a relaxing vacation had turned into a near-death trap. And her own son was at the center of it. The next day, Linda discovered more unsettling truths. Mark had been hiding debts and risky financial investments. He had forged signatures on documents, trying to secure large sums of money from Linda's bank accounts. He had planned to disappear after ensuring she would be trapped on the ship, leaving her isolated and unable to interfere. Linda's heart broke. Her son, the boy she had raised with love, had betrayed her. But she refused to break. Walsh promised her justice. "We'll get to the bottom of this," he said. "No one gets away with this on my watch." The cruise continued, but Linda felt no fear now. She had seen the danger. She had avoided it. And she knew the storm was far from over. Someone had tried to manipulate her, someone had tried to scare her, and now she had clues. She would follow them. She would find the truth. That night, as she stood at the window looking out over the dark waves, she whispered to herself, "Mark, why? Why did you bring me here?" Somewhere in the shadows, someone listened. And the game of truth, lies, and survival was only beginning. Linda spent the next day moving carefully around the cruise ship. Every step felt heavy, every shadow seemed alive. The previous night's encounter with Victor had shaken her, but it had also awakened something inside her. Fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by determination. She had to know why Mark had done this. She had to find him, and she had to uncover the full truth before anything worse happened. Detective Walsh stayed close, pretending to enjoy the ship like a normal guest while keeping a careful eye on her. "We need to move carefully," he said as they walked through the lounge. "Victor will talk, but we have to be ready for surprises. Your son, he's clever. He won't go down easily." Linda nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I need to understand. I raised him. I worked my entire life for him. And now he's done this." Her voice broke. Walsh put a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We'll get answers. We'll do this together." By late afternoon, Linda found herself wandering toward the ship's lower decks. She noticed the corridors were dimmer here, and the hum of engines beneath the metal floor made her feel tense. Walsh had instructed her to observe, to listen, and to trust her instincts. She had learned to notice the smallest details: a shadow moving too quickly, a door slightly open, a whisper too faint to understand. These details told her stories. And right now, the story was dangerous. As she passed a storage room, she froze. Inside, she saw Mark speaking to someone, his voice low, urgent. She could only catch fragments. "She's awake. She's noticed, she can't interfere yet." Mark's face was hidden in shadow, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Beside him, a younger man she did not recognize nodded. They were planning something. Linda's heart pounded. She realized she could not wait any longer. She needed Walsh. She moved as quietly as possible to the nearest emergency phone. Walsh answered immediately. "What is it?" he whispered. "Mark, he's here. He's planning something. I can hear him talking with someone else." Walsh's face went grave. "Stay where you are. Do not confront them. I'm coming." Within minutes, Walsh arrived with 2 other officers disguised as ship staff. They moved silently through the corridors. Linda stayed back in the shadows, peeking through a crack in the door. Mark was pacing now, clearly agitated. He muttered under his breath, "It's too risky. She's too smart. But I have to finish this tonight." Linda felt a cold chill. What could he mean by finish this? Was he planning to harm her? To make her disappear completely? She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to scream. Walsh gestured to the officers, and they prepared to move in. But before they could enter, the unknown younger man turned sharply and noticed movement outside the door. "Someone's there," he shouted. Linda ducked quickly as Walsh pushed past the door with the officers. A struggle erupted. Mark froze, shocked to see the detectives, but he didn't run. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Mom," he whispered, but there was no warmth in his voice. It was almost like an apology he didn't want to give. Walsh grabbed Mark by the shoulders. "Step away from her," he said firmly. Mark hesitated, his eyes darting between Linda and the officers. Then he tried to push past Walsh toward the deck. The younger man ran after him. Linda followed cautiously, her heart racing. The ship's hallways turned into a chaotic chase. The storm outside had grown stronger, the waves lashing against the hull. Water seeped under the doors of the corridors, making the floor slick. Linda's heart pounded as she tried to keep up, her small shoes slipping slightly on the wet metal. She had never felt more alive, and more afraid, at the same time. Mark pushed through a door that led to the open deck. Rain pelted down, drenching him instantly. He stumbled as the wind whipped against his face. The younger man lunged, but Walsh tackled him. Linda saw Mark teeter on the edge of the deck railing. Her stomach sank. "Mark! No!" she screamed, running forward. The rain poured into her eyes, making it difficult to see. But she didn't stop. She reached out and grabbed his arm just as he lost his balance. Her hands were wet, her grip slipping slightly, but she held on with every ounce of strength she had. Mark stared at her, his eyes wide with shock and something else, regret, maybe fear. "Mom, why won't you let me go?" he shouted over the storm. Linda held him tighter. "Because I'm not going to lose you. Not like this. Not to anyone. Not even to yourself." Walsh ran forward and helped pull them both away from the edge. The younger man had been restrained by the other officers, and the chaos slowly settled. Linda was drenched to the bone, her hair plastered to her face. She was shaking violently, but relief flooded through her. Mark, soaked and shivering, looked defeated. Later, in the ship's secure room, Linda sat in a chair, wrapped in a warm blanket. Mark was across the room, cuffed, staring at the floor. He had nothing to say. Victor, the man from before, had been giving information to Walsh, revealing that Mark had been deeply involved in a network of fraud, money laundering, and threats, all of which had led to this cruise being planned as a trap. Linda's heart ached. "Mark, why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He finally looked at her, tears mingling with the rain on his face. I didn't want to hurt you, Mom. I didn't. I thought. I needed money. I was trapped. I thought if I could, his voice cracked, and he could not finish the sentence. Linda's heart broke, but she also felt a strange calm. She had survived. She had faced danger and lived. And now, she knew the truth. Her son had made mistakes, but she had the power to stop the cycle of deceit and danger. The rest of the cruise felt different. Linda no longer wandered the halls aimlessly, filled with fear. She stayed close to Walsh, observing every move of the remaining crew and passengers. She discovered hidden messages, secret meetings, and patterns she had missed before. Every detail added to the puzzle, every observation brought clarity. One night, as she sat by the window, looking at the stormy ocean, she realized something. Mark had been reckless, but he had also been desperate. The danger was far from over, and she had to be ready. She had to survive, and she had to make sure justice was served. Later, she found another note slipped under her door. This time, it was not threatening. It read, "The truth is closer than you think." Linda smiled faintly. She understood. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside the ship, but also the storm inside her. She had learned to watch, to listen, to act. And now, the time would come to face the final truths. As the night deepened, she stood at the deck, letting the wind and rain wash over her face. Her hands were no longer trembling. Her eyes were sharp, focused. She would not be a victim. Not anymore. She would find out everything, and she would confront it. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, dark and mysterious. Somewhere on this ship, hidden secrets waited. Someone was still watching. Someone still wanted to control the outcome. But Linda was ready. And she knew that tomorrow, the real confrontation would begin. Linda spent the next morning awake before sunrise. Her eyes, red from sleeplessness, scanned the cabin over and over. Every detail now seemed suspicious. The small stain on the carpet she hadn't noticed before, the angle of the picture frame, even the slight smell of cologne lingering in the air that wasn't hers. She knew something was off. The cruise, which Mark had promised would be relaxing, felt more like a trap every second she stayed on board. Detective Walsh arrived quietly at her door. "Ready," he whispered. Linda nodded. "We need to find out what he's planning before it's too late." Walsh led her through narrow service corridors, the hum of engines below them, the smell of diesel and metal filling the air. They moved silently, past cleaning carts and stacked luggage, careful not to attract attention. Earlier, Walsh had managed to access some of the ship's internal documents. He handed Linda a small folder. Inside were schedules, logs, and notes. What caught her eye immediately was Mark's name appearing repeatedly in unusual places. He had arranged meetings, interacted with crew members in secret, and somehow gained access to areas reserved for staff. Linda's stomach sank. Mark had been hiding far more than she could imagine. Why would he do this? Linda whispered, her voice trembling. Why would he lie about the cruise? Why is he on the ship secretly? Walsh shook his head. "We'll find out. But we need proof before confronting him." The day passed with increasing tension. Linda kept her eyes open, following every suspicious movement. At lunch, she noticed a man in a black jacket lingering near the elevators. He carried a briefcase and checked his phone constantly. Every now and then, he would glance toward her, his eyes cold and calculating. Linda quickly ducked behind a pillar, her pulse racing. She realized the ship was bigger than she imagined, and the corridors seemed endless. It was easy to get lost, easy to be trapped, easy to be unseen. Every time she thought she was alone, a shadow would flicker past, and she would startle. By late afternoon, Linda decided to take a risk. She sneaked into the lower decks, closer to the engine room. There, in a dim corridor lined with pipes and machinery, she heard hushed voices. One of them was unmistakably Mark's. "She's awake," he was saying. "She's figuring things out. We have to act tonight. No mistakes." Linda's hands trembled. She stepped back, holding her breath. Her heart pounded as she tried to comprehend the words. He was planning something. Something serious. She realized that Mark was not only lying to her, he was actively putting her in danger. Walsh appeared quietly behind her. "I heard that," he said softly. "We have to move carefully. He's dangerous when desperate." Together, they followed Mark and the man with the briefcase from a safe distance. They watched as he spoke to several crew members in hushed tones, pointing to different parts of the ship. Linda's mind raced. What could he possibly want? The more she observed, the more she realized that the entire cruise had been orchestrated by Mark. The staff, the routes, even the malfunctioning cameras, all part of his plan. That night, Linda returned to her cabin only to find another warning. This one was even more chilling. A small note slipped under her door, wet from the rain outside. It read, "Tonight, everything changes." Fear coiled tightly around her chest. She could not ignore the warning. She placed her back against the door, listening carefully. Somewhere on the ship, footsteps echoed. Not just one set of footsteps, many. Someone was moving with purpose, searching. She contacted Walsh, who was already preparing a plan. "Tonight we catch them," he said. "Mark and anyone helping him. We need to act before they make a move." As the storm outside worsened, the ship rocked violently. Waves crashed against the sides, rain poured down, and lightning lit up the dark clouds above. Linda stood on the deck, looking out at the endless grey ocean, feeling small but determined. The wind lashed her face, soaking her hair and clothes, but she didn't care. She needed to survive. She needed to uncover the truth. Later, she moved toward the corridor where she had last seen Mark. The lights flickered ominously. Every step she took made her pulse race faster. She reached a service door, slightly ajar, and peeked inside. Mark was there, speaking to Victor, the same man who had been involved with shady deals in Part 2. They were both tense, glancing toward the corridor every few seconds. Mark's face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination and fear. Victor held a set of documents, and Mark was gesturing toward the main deck. "Everything needs to happen tonight," Mark said. "She can't interfere. Make sure the crew is ready." Linda realized the danger she had avoided before had only been a warning. This was the real plan. She felt icy fear run through her veins. She wanted to run, but she knew running would only put her at greater risk. She needed Walsh. She pressed her emergency device quietly, signaling him. Within minutes, Walsh and 2 officers appeared silently in the shadows. They were ready. Victor sensed something and moved quickly, but Walsh intercepted him. A struggle began. Victor tried to fight, but Walsh overpowered him. Mark froze, shocked, and for a moment, fear crossed his face. He looked at Linda, and she could see a flicker of guilt. But it was too late for apologies. He tried to escape toward the open deck, but Walsh blocked him. Linda's heart raced as she watched the storm crash around them. The wind howled, the rain stung, and the ship rocked violently. Mark teetered on the edge of the railing. Linda ran toward him, shouting his name. "Mark! Stop!" Her hands reached out just as he slipped. She grabbed his arm, holding on for dear life. His hands were wet and slippery, his face pale with shock. "Mom, why?" he shouted over the storm. Linda held him tightly. "Because I love you. And I won't let you destroy yourself, or me." With Walsh's help, they pulled him away from the edge. Victor was restrained, and the immediate threat passed. Linda collapsed to the deck, exhausted but relieved. She was soaked, shivering, but alive. Mark sat nearby, silent, his expression one of defeat and confusion. Later, in a secure room, Walsh interrogated Mark. He confessed to his debts, to planning the trap, and to trying to isolate Linda for his gain. Linda listened, her heart aching with betrayal and sorrow. Her son, the boy she had raised with love, had almost caused her death. Yet, despite the fear, she felt strength. She had faced danger, uncovered lies, and survived. She realized that the storm outside mirrored the storm inside her. But unlike before, she was no longer powerless. She had learned to watch, to listen, to act. As the night drew on, Linda stood once more at the deck, rain soaking her completely, her hair plastered to her face. She watched the ocean, endless and mysterious. She whispered to herself, "I will survive. I will find the truth. And I will make sure justice is done." The storm continued around her, but inside, Linda felt a new calm. She knew the next steps would be harder, but she also knew she would not be afraid. She had faced death, betrayal, and fear, and she had endured. And somewhere on the ship, hidden in the shadows, someone was still watching, waiting for the right moment. But Linda was ready. Tomorrow, she would confront everything.